Up+Adam.
Tractor systems are offline.
We are Beyond FM.
Beyond FM.
The future of broadcasting is here.
Up+Adam with Adam Montiel. It's community content from Concentrate. It's Up+Adam with Adam Montiel.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Yes, some say life is just where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again.
Back at it. Happy Tuesday, that feels like Monday. Hope you had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Thank you so much for being Up+Adam. My name is Adam Montiel. All right, coming up for a True Crime Tuesday, a little bit of a twist. We're talking about a threat that's not just knocking at your front door. It is already inside. Imagine a toxic chemical coursing through your blood right now. One you didn't ask for, never agreed to, but almost certainly have. It's in your raincoat. It's in your mascara. Might even be in your dental floss. They're called PFAS. PFAS? PFAS, Forever Chemicals, right? And according to the CDC, and look, well, they're found in 97% of Americans. And now, thanks to decades of cover-ups, careless corporations, and government inaction, we're facing a contamination crisis that's touched every corner of this country, including right here in San Luis Obispo County. Award-winning journalists Sharon, Udasin, and Rachel Frazin, they did the dirty work, literally and journalistically, to track this chemical nightmare from hidden corporate memos to the drinking water in your glass. They're serving up a new book called Poisoning the Well, How Forever Chemicals Contaminated America. And later in the show, they're joining us to share what they uncovered. It's heartbreaking, it's maddening, and it's happening to all of us. So stick around. Interesting True Crime Tuesday, because once you hear this, you will never look at nonstick the same, or maybe even your mascara the same way again. So before we get into that, what do we have in the docket? Oh, well, sailing with Phoenix. He reached Hawaii on Memorial Day weekend, on Saturday, I want to say, Saturday, like late morning, to a whole bunch of fanfare. I mean, Coast Guard boats went and intercepted him and escorted him in. You had helicopters floating above him. People just got on their boats and so it's like this whole parade of boats started coming in, just kind of surrounding Phoenix. It was really wild. And then, he makes his way off the boat, and they didn't really cover everything because he came into a private area, the Waikiki Yacht Club. And so while some people kind of filled him kind of coming into the docks, if you will, I think the time that he got into the slip and said hello to his close family and friends, that was a private time from what I understand. But the Waikiki Yacht Club welcomed him in. They had 500 or so of the public. They invited everyone over there. They had a huge party for him. And you could tell he says it in his videos while we saw him on the ocean, he is really socially awkward. And this kind of attention was very tough for him. And it made me feel like, I wonder if a lot of the folks that were giving him all this fanfare, sure, they're inspired by Oliver. They love him. And so remember, his name is, his boat is called Phoenix. His cat is called Phoenix. The account is called Sailing with Phoenix, but his name is Oliver. So I feel like, getting his name right makes sense. So although everyone loves Oliver, I feel like that party was more for everyone else than him. He just looked, and I'm sure he said he was overjoyed, but he just looked so uncomfortable and everything happening around him. He's just kind of like when you're turning your shoulders with your neck, looking left, looking right, what is going on around me? And he just looked wildly uncomfortable. But man, it's so cool. They treated him like a king. I mean, the mayor of Honolulu came out. It was even maybe the governor of Hawaii. It was a big deal. For the whole state, all the islands, they came out. Public came out, and it was really something. So he's safe. He's back. He's chilling. He's eating steaks. He's getting treated like a freaking king right now. And he's got some stuff to fix on his boat, namely a sail. So you have those two big sails, right? You got your main sail, and then towards the front of the boat, you have what they call the jib sail. And I believe that's the smaller triangle. And his just had all kinds of rips in it. And he woke up that final day and a half and saw all these rips in the jib sail. So he's got a lot to replace before he makes his next trip to wherever that is. He wanted to sail around the world, so we are not done seeing him yet. But so thankful he took us on that ride for about 3.5, 4 weeks, and that was really something. The world discovered Oliver and Sailing with Phoenix. Again, the dude who took his 401k, emptied $30,000, $40,000 of it after working 11 years at this job. He was at a tire shop and bought a sailboat and pushed it all aside to follow his dreams and sail the world. 29 years old. Pretty cool story. So glad he got there safe, Oliver. All right. A couple other little nuggets. Alexa, archive my life, please. One writer's creepy dive into Amazon's ears. Listen to this. What happens when you ask Amazon to give you everything Alexa's ever heard you say? Well, one writer, one journalist did just that. And what he got back was part fascinating and part terrifying. After filing a GDPR data request, Amazon sent him 3 zip files. Inside, over 3,500 audio clips, each one a little breadcrumb of his life. The obvious stuff was there, asking for timers, the weather, smart home controls. But then he started hearing other things, conversations he never meant to record, moments that weren't prefaced with, Alexa. Turns out these smart speakers don't just activate on Alexa. They are listening all the time for something close enough to sound like it so it can wake them up. One clip was, and we've known this, we've known that they've been listening to us for a long time, and how many, it's almost become old and passé now to the dynamic of speaking about something just out to your partner in the world, maybe to yourself in the room, and then seeing something with relation to that on your phone in the next hour or something. So we've all kind of experienced that in some way or another. One clip, he was talking about an ex. Another, a friend was making a joke. A few had no clear trigger at all. Just ambient life, getting caught up and tucked away in a server farm somewhere. Even creepier, the transcripts. Amazon doesn't just store your voice. They also log their interpretation of everything you say, like little searchable notes. If you're in the EU or the UK, where this guy happened to be, you can file the same kind of data request. In the US, no such protection. You're in the dark. And Amazon's not legally required to tell you a thing. This story isn't just about privacy. It's kind of about consent, right? Or do you, I guess you forego that once you buy this thing and stick it in your house. Every time I go to like an Airbnb or somewhere and they got one of the Alexas or the Hey Googles, I simply unplug it. Like, hell no. We're bringing tech into our homes for convenience, but we don't care, or we don't fully realize, or we don't care that we're also handing over intimacy. A smart speaker that hears your baby cry can also hear you argue, cry, laugh, rant. And depending on where you live, that data might be saved, analyzed, even used to train AI models with your actual voice. So next time you casually say, Alexa, play my chill playlist, just know, oh, she's been listening, even when you thought she wasn't. Yikes. Okay, one more quick story. I know I got lo-fi headlines back, I guess, huh? Well, it's official. The pennies getting pinched after more than 160 years of clinking around in our pockets, under our couch cushions, maybe inside those random tip jars that we swear we'll never come back to. The U.S. Mint is pulling the plug on the 1-cent coin. Come 2026, they'll stop producing new pennies altogether. And let's be honest, inflation kind of made that call a while ago. And it's been something that a lot of different presidents and people have said they're going to do, and we're just doing it now. The Wall Street Journal broke the news. It costs 2.5 cents to make every single penny. That's not just ironic. That's government inefficiency with a copper finish. And it's not just about the penny. It's about metal, copper-plated zinc. It ain't cheap. And keeping this coin in circulation has become more than a pain in the ass than it's worth. Literally. Canada ditched their penny over a decade ago, and guess what? The sky didn't fall. Most folks didn't even notice. The U.S. is going to likely follow the lead by rounding cash transactions up or down to the nearest nickel, though digital payments will still stay exact. And let's be honest, no one's going to be rounding down. So if you're one of those people hoarding jars of change for, quote, someday, your someday just got a little brighter, or at least maybe a little more collectible. The Mint says they'll keep honoring pennies forever, but 2026 will be the final last batch that are pressed. The penny may be small, but this is big for wallets, big for history, big for people who still think Abe Lincoln's been giving you side-eye from your jeans pocket since 1982. Crazy, huh? Just like that. The penny drops. What's next? Daylight savings time? That'd be something big. All right, before we jump into our conversation with the gals and talk Forever Chemicals, this stuff is super interesting. Want to talk about Pink Drank. Want you to bring your thirst, leave your excuses, because this summer we pour pink. Pink Drank is back Saturday, July 12th at the Elks Lodge in SLO. Over 30 of the hottest producers in wine, beer, cider, spirits, craft cocktails, all poolside, all dressed in pink, curated bites, live DJ. I'll be out there hosting vibes you cannot fake. This isn't your average tasting too. We got some of the best names. This is summer served sexy, and all for a great cause. Supports the Woods Humane Society, also the Elks National Foundation. Last year we did youth activities, helped put SLO High School, did a baseball backstop for them. So you can party with purpose. This event exclusively for the grown and sexy, 21 and over, priced like it shouldn't be. $65 for all this. You are not, come hungry, come thirsty, and I swear you won't leave either. Grab your tickets now. Pink Drank, DRANK, pinkdrank.org.
It's Up and Adam with Adam Montiel.
All right, today we're joined by two powerhouse journalists who've uncovered one of the most urgent and really disturbing environmental stories of our time. Sharon Udasin and Rachel Frazin are the co-authors of a new book called Poisoning the Well, How Forever Chemicals Contaminated America. It's a deeply reported expose on PFAS, those invisible, toxic compounds found in everything from Teflon pans to mascara. Now they're coursing through the blood of nearly every American, with shoe leather reporting that took them from corporate archives to contaminated towns like Courtland, Alabama, and even the banks of the Cape Fear River. They expose a haunting timeline of corporate greed, government failure, and human resilience. From heartbreak to heroism, this story is national, yes, but it is also local, as you will find out from the ladies. Let's welcome Sharon and Rachel. Thank you, ladies, for being Up and Adam.
Thank you for having us.
You know, it's so interesting, and I think a book like this is so, necessary. You write that these PFAS chemicals are coursing through the veins of like 97% of Americans. And I want to ask, when did you realize this story wasn't just urgent like journalism, but it's personal?
Yeah, I think when I saw that CDC study, for me, something really clicked of, oh no, this isn't just some sad thing that's happening to somebody far away. Don't get me wrong, it's that too, but it's also inside of me and you and everyone I know pretty much.
Yeah. You've both uncovered documents where companies knew about the dangers of PFAS for a long time, decades. Did you ever have a moment reading one of those where you had to kind of pull the file down and like take a breath, like, oh my God, this is wild?
Many, many times. I think for me, there was one document where they were sort of debating about, the janitorial staff and like, do we tell them that, this is building up in their blood and what do we do about that? And ultimately what they decided to do was, the company said, well, we'll test them for it and we'll charge them. We'll charge the janitorial company to pay to have their workers' blood tested because they're cleaning up the chemicals that we made.
Yeah.
And for me, one of the things that really struck me was just the military aspect of this and meeting people who are veterans that have been affected by these compounds, who have come home from Iraq, Afghanistan, largely unscathed, and then end up contaminated by PFAS.
Now, Brenda Hampton's story opens the book like a warning siren. Was she kind of your North Star in this project?
She's like, she's a regular person who has had so much effect on both her local community and on Alabama and on the national scale as well. And I think that she took us through both, each of us separately, on what we call a death tour through her community. And because it's such a small community, when she's pointing right and left and telling us this one died here, that one died here, it's so visible and tangible that, I don't know, that really struck me when I was sitting there in the car with her.
Oh, man. When you started talking to people in these poisoned towns, What surprised you more, the scale of the contamination or really like the silence around it?
So keeping it at Alabama just for a second, the contradictions were just so apparent because the same communities that are being poisoned by industry are also dependent on industry. So just that interplay, like the people needed these companies for their jobs, for their livelihoods, and at the same time, they're also being contaminated by them.
So when I visited North Carolina, it was a little bit of a different story in that, the factory was kind of far away and it had sort of polluted the river, which flowed downstream and, hit the people who did not sort of have the economic benefit of it. But just the scale there was so immense and horrifying and heartbreaking. And I think that for me, one of the things that really struck me is one community that I had visited, they were just sort of getting their hands around this issue and were starting to learn about it. And after I visited, they started sort of counting, hey, I actually do know a lot of people who have had cancer. And in this very small sort of rural community outside of Wilmington, North Carolina, on just 2 streets, they found like 130 cases of cancer.
Oh my gosh.
It was just devastating, heartbreaking, and, eye-opening.
Forever Chemicals, it's like forever cover-ups. Do you think that we've been like fighting the wrong battle in a way, regulating effects instead of really demanding accountability?
Yeah, and one issue of accountability has also been with the government and the Department of Defense and the use of AFFF firefighting foam in a lot of places. And I just wanted to bring that up because I know that San Luis, how do I actually pronounce it?
San Luis Obispo. Yeah. San Luis Obispo.
Yeah. County recently joined a multi-district litigation in South Carolina, which is against producers of that firefighting foam. And in that lawsuit, the county is alleging that many companies were aware of PFAS dangers as early as the end of the 1980s because you guys have an airport, your regional airport.
Right.
And you have a closed landfill in Los Osos.
Right. Los Osos, correct, yeah.
And a water recycling facility. And the municipal water system, that your drinking water is fine, but tests are showing that 52 out of 57 private wells near the airport were polluted. Now, so you guys are in this lawsuit that's against companies, but you can't really go against the federal government because they have a shield called federal immunity. So that's about accountability. Who can you hold accountable for these things?
Well, you tell me, but Rachel, chime in first before I expand on that.
I was going to say, at the same time, I think that, a real through line that we heard in our reporting was a lot of people said to us, well, if I poison you, I'm going to prison. If you poison me, you might get a fine. How is that fair? And I think that, that's the way that our system is set up is that, it's lawsuits and it's fines and it's penalties from the government. But, there really is sort of a lack of accountability.
So if we can kind of like break open that local tie-in a little bit more, it's interesting. So the county or different counties, and specifically ours, will see the lawsuit and then kind of jump in and say, hey, we have claims to this as well.
Yeah, it's growing and growing and growing, and it's all concentrated in South Carolina for a federal judge. Again, it's called multi-district litigation because there just are so many of these claims across the country that they needed to consolidate it into one thing. And this is only about firefighting foam that contained PFAS, and it's only against the producers. Again, it has nothing to do with the Department of Defense, only the actual corporations that produced the chemicals in the firefighting foams.
And you're talking about the private wells. When you talk about that, is that like these are landowners that did their own testing and found out that they're private wells, 52 out of 57 or whatever you...
The county was the one doing the testing. Since I'm not actually living in the region, I don't know who actually accesses those wells, but they were testing just the ones in the vicinity of the airport to see just how contaminated they are. I don't know if those are individual residents or what exactly, but they said 52 out of 57 private wells. And usually when you use the term private wells, you mean like individual consumers.
Yeah, there's a lot of ag around there too. I mean, there's from wine grapes to, and there's the Cal Fire has a station right there. on the airport. If I were going to do some diligent and just community digging, where would someone like me, who's a journalist, but locally, where would you recommend that I begin?
So there are databases online. A group called the Environmental Working Group sort of looks at tap water around the country, and they look at all kinds of contaminants, including PFAS, and they may or may not have tested your area, but if they have, they can probably tell you at least what their test results were. But you should also call your local water utility and ask, like, hey, have you guys tested for PFAS? Have you found it? Call, local and state, environmental departments and say, hey, is this something that you guys are looking for? And what are our levels?
And what's the organization you said, or that website that sometimes has that?
The Environmental Working Group, EWG.
Oh, so interesting. This is fascinating. I love this. There's almost something diabolically clever about how these chemicals are used. Raincoats, mascara, cookware. Was there one product that made you go, what, even this?
I think dental floss was probably a big one. They do make PFAS-free flosses out there. You just kind of have to do the research and put in the time and look it up. But, and I think that one is particularly alarming to me because, if you're somebody who flosses, you might bleed and then it can get into your bloodstream if you're, putting floss, this material into your blood.
Right.
Speaking of bleeding, another one for me that I think about is menstrual products. I have a 6-year-old girl and she's not quite, at that stage yet, but it makes me think
of course.
Okay, once she gets to that age, I'm going to be putting materials with PFAS there for her.
Yeah. Right.
I think also bandages was one for me. Again, just as far as blood goes, I was like, this too? You gotta be kidding me. And I don't know, because if I get a cut, I'll want to cover it up. I don't want to have an open wound that gets infected, but, I also don't know what is in this material that I'm putting on my body.
You talk to, this book just includes so many different stories. It's fantastic. And, it also spans, this story spans these cancer clusters, government failures, corporate secrets. It almost feels like a true crime saga. I mean, if you could give this book a second genre label, I think you could. I mean,
yeah, no, it really is immense because the companies have had documents going back to the 1960s, calling these things hazardous and warning their own scientists like, hey, you got to handle this with care, or, oh, what do we do about this waste? It might be toxic. I guess we have to figure out a way to bake it to, so we don't contaminate ourselves and the water. So, there's been evidence going back decades and, animal studies, finding liver damage in rats and in dogs, and really is amazing.
What's something you wanted to include in this book, but you just couldn't? It was too complex, too raw, too unresolved?
It's a great question. I think that one thing I would say is that, this book, we finished writing this in May of 2024. So we had no idea what the politics were going to look like over the course of the next year. So, we didn't know we were writing this. Joe Biden was still running for president at that time. So I think just it was sort of unresolved as far as, where the government was going and who would be in power and what they would or wouldn't want to do about this.
Rachel, Sharon, the book, the information, and the both of you, so informative. I can't thank you enough for educating us, for Sharon, for dropping that local knowledge here, gives us something to kind of open the door and run with a little bit. I hope to talk to you two ladies again. Thank you for your great work in this fantastic book. Link in the show notes. Thank you both ladies for being Up and Adam.
Thank you for having us.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again.
Wow, Sharon, Rachel, thank you both for your powerful work, for your voices, and for making this invisible threat very visible. Poisoning the Well is not just a book, it's a wake-up call. And I know some of our listeners, some of these readers of their book, they're walking away smarter, more aware, and probably a little pissed off in all the right ways. We got links in the show notes and even links to the reporting at The Hill. Sharon and Rachel, thank you both again for being Up and Adam. Oh, what a chat, huh? All right, let's thank our friends at Dow. First off, they dropped something pretty cool called Taste of Luxury. Tiny vials, big flavor. You get to sample Dow's top-tier wines like Patrimony in these sleek 100ml pours. Things like Soul of a Lion, all their best stuff. It's like a first-class flight for your palate. Then there's Dow Plus. It's an app for their community that gets you exclusive wines, VIP events, and all-access perks on the mountain. I want you to go to dowvineyards.com, check it out. Serious luxury, Paso style, DowVineyards.com. All right, earlier we mentioned Pink Drank. We're going to be later on this week rolling the curtains back on some winning. Give you a chance at tickets to Pink Drank. Don't forget, Saturday, July 12th at the Elks Lodge in San Luis Obispo, pinkdrank.org for tickets. And it's a benefit, all for a great cause. Woods Humane Society, Elks National Foundation. Check it out, pinkdrank.org. All right, thanks to our friends at Moonshiner Collective for original music on the show called Start Again. Find them wherever you stream your music and go to moonshinercollective.com for more. Also, thanks to Timbre Winery for the Lowbro Studios at Timbre. Josh and she also have a wonderful world-class winery serving up some of the best Pinot, Chardonnay, even Syrahs, Merlots. They got it all going on. Tasting room in the village of Arroyo Grande. Love what they're doing. TimbreWinery.com for more. And want to say thank you to you for rating, reviewing, subscribing to what we're doing here at the show, and sharing it with a friend. It really, really, truly means a lot. A little cooler this week. Hope you enjoy the rest of your week and are having a great day. Till tomorrow, I'm Adam Montiel. Thank you so much for being Up and Adam.
Some say life's where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again. Let's start again. We'll start